We could talk about how the Twins won a playoff game for the
Man,
first time in
18
18
since
years, 19 years.
2004.
Yeah,
So, I
since we
mean,
were
it
in high
was,
school.
and Johan Santana was the last one to win a playoff game for the Twins, which was crazy when I saw that. Um, 15 or 14, 13 of the 18 losses were to the New York Yankees, which is pathetic and hilarious. And I mean, imagine just getting owned that much by one team over and over and over again in the playoffs.
Hmm. I was going to say it's like what's happening between the Chiefs and the Denver Broncos, but then you said in the playoffs,
In the
and
playoffs.
obviously they're nowhere near the playoffs. But it is a tremendous amount of ownage for a team to lose 18 straight playoff games and to lose 13 of them to the same team. I mean, that is approaching Denver Broncos levels of ineptitude. But hey, they beat the streak.
They beat the streak. And just to give everyone a little context on how that streak was started, they won the World Series in 91. They didn't make the playoffs again until 2002. So they already missed the playoffs for 11 years. And then they won the division series and lost the ALCS in 02. Then in 03, they won their very first game that year and then lost the next three to the Yankees. And then they did the same thing again in 04, won their first, lost games 2, 3, and 4 to the Yankees. That was the first 3 games of the streak. Then they got swept by the A's by 3 games. Then in 09 and 10 got swept by the Yankees 3-0 each year. So that was up to 12. Then in 17 lost a 1-game wild card playoff to guess who? The Yankees, streak at 13. Then in 2019, they got swept 3-0 by the New York Yankees. Their streak was at 16. Then in 2020, they made the first ever best of 3 wild card series against the Astros. They lost both of those games. Streak hit 18 games, but tonight they are off the hook. They beat the Toronto Blue Jays 3-1, and the Twins have now won a playoff game for the first time in 2 decades.
Suck it, Canada. Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter /X at RealBirdLawyer, on Blue Sky at BirdLawExpert. Here with me as always, my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Witt. What is going on?
Do you have any Blue Sky? Have you logged into Blue Sky? Do you have any followers? What's it like?
Well, actually, I did log into it once after I got the invite and I set up my account, and I haven't gone back since then. So truth be told, I don't know how many people have followed me on Blue Sky, and I'm not going to check it right now because we're on the air. But
sure.
No, that's a really interesting question.
I'm curious, what's it like over there? Is it
do
people tweet or? I don't know what to call
it's definitely more tweet-like from the 5 minutes that I spent on there. It's definitely more tweet-like than Threads, RIP. Because
Threads is garbage.
The goal of Blue Sky was to create, Twitter, and the goal of Threads was to create some weird,
hybrid
Facebookized version of Twitter where you can't actually follow anybody, and it's all the For You tab. It's it's all the worst aspects of social media, and of course, Zuck wanted to, work on that. And, after that one magical weekend where everybody went over and signed up for Threads when Twitter was rate limited, nobody's ever been back. So I couldn't tell you too much about it, but just for you, I will log in sometime between this episode and next episode, and I'll give you a scouting report on Blue Sky. Elon's threatening to charge us for Twitter, and if that happens, I'm out. But
that'll be our new home.
Until then, you can find us on that website /application. We're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. If you missed out on preseason best ball drafts, don't worry. You can still draft. If you're not familiar with the concept, you get in, you draft a team of fantasy football players, and that's your team for the rest of the year. You don't have to add or drop any players. It will play your best lineup every week. The best team at the end wins the pot. You win money. It's great. They also have your little daily, weekly lineups where, you pick 4 or 5 over-unders and you win. Obviously, if your overs all hit, kind of fun. You can use our promo code SUNNY, SUNNY, to get a matching deposit up to your first $100. I don't know what else is going on. We got a great show.
We got a great show. That's what's going on.
What is happening? We've got a recap of another Chiefs victory, this time over the New York Jets. We've got a preview of Chiefs and Vikings. Yeah, let's get into the great show. We start off as always with injury news, and we're recording this on a Tuesday, which is a little bit weird for us, but we've got stuff going on this week. I'm going to see the Eagles on Thursday, not the football team, but the musical group Caca. And then we've got a wedding this weekend, so we had to get this in a little bit early. We don't have an injury report yet, but the only new injury reported from Sunday, per Andy Reid, was linebacker Cole Christensen tweaking a hamstring. So sounds like everybody got out of the Jets game clean. Obviously, we will see if Nick Bolton is able to go this week. He's been working his way back from that ankle injury, but Chiefs relatively healthy right now.
Yeah. I thought they would miss Bolton a lot more. Not to say that they haven't missed him, but Drew Tranquill is a dude, and the linebackers are dudes. And even without really, really good middle linebacker in Nick Bolton, I'm looking forward to him coming back, but it doesn't seem like they're really missing a beat right now on defense.
No, it doesn't. And, Bolton brings a particular set of skills in that he's really good at thumping people at or near the line of scrimmage. And, have they missed that a little bit? Sure. Would he have maybe prevented some of those big plays from Breece Hall on Sunday? Maybe if he was in the lineup, but it'll be good to get him back. But yeah, the linebacker room has played really well in his absence. The only other piece of news is Travis Kelce is dating Taylor Swift. Still.
What?
Pretty crazy. That's still going on. We have to talk about this because, number one, there's really not any other news. And number two, this is the biggest news. It remains the biggest news
in
related
the world.
To, I was going to say with the Kansas City Chiefs, but you're right. In the world, it is in the world. It's the biggest news of the world. You have the number one celebrity in the world in Taylor Swift. You have number one tight end of all time and in the NFL currently, and on the Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelce. We've got some updates here. I've been selectively following Swifties, and if there are any of you listening, welcome back. We appreciate you listening to the show. We welcome you to our sport, and we hope you get to stay for a long time because we're very into this, if you can't tell. I've got some updates for you, Taylor, from Us Weekly. So here's some unsourced quotations, but I am told, since they come from a reputable publication, Us Weekly, very well known, they've got their sources.
It's like if Schefter tweets it or something. That's Swifty Schefter.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Taylor's doing all the things she hasn't had time for lately, like going out with her friends and staying out late. No, that's nice. Doesn't directly involve Travis, but it's Travis adjacent. Taylor has decided she's not going to hide anymore. She's going to be our authentic self and enjoy life.
Let me interject here for a second.
Sure,
Did you know that she used to sneak herself out of her apartment in a human-sized suitcase?
I have heard that. Yes.
When the paparazzi were at their peak, and maybe they still are, but like she was so sick of them that she would have to literally be smuggled out of her apartment. So it seems like she's over that. She is going to be enjoying her authentic self and enjoying life. Love to hear that for her.
Now, what that also includes is her enjoying the company of one Travis Kelce. Travis and Taylor, quote, talk every day. Taylor's really enjoying getting to know Travis. They're taking it day by day, but she has high hopes. She likes that he's a normal, nice guy. He's down to earth and isn't affected by fame. She also thinks he's hot.
Fair on all counts.
A fourth source says the feelings are mutual. Quote, Travis is completely smitten. Taylor is at a point in her life where she's no longer willing to hold back, says the second source. If something feels right, like it does with Travis, she's jumping in with both feet. She's very happy and loving life right now. Taylor, your thoughts?
I'm loving life. I'm very happy and loving life right now. My name's Taylor. So, it's all working. My thoughts.
Everything's coming up, Taylor.
Everything's coming up, Taylor. It's great. It's great to hear. She deserves it. He deserves it. Everyone deserves to be happy, obviously. And yeah, it's kind of under the microscope right now. And yeah, some people, not us, some people are sick of hearing about it, but like, it's love, guys. Like what, it's not like we're talking about some horrible murderer or something constantly. Like it's just two beautiful, rich, awesome people that are in love. Like just calm down. It's great. I love it.
Two of the most talented artists, and I do use that word for what Travis Kelce does on the football field every Sunday, of their generation. And really, it's a beautiful thing. It's a great thing to see. Did you see that Taylor is officially one of us?
I did. I sent it to you.
She sang "Home the Chiefs." She said Chiefs during the national anthem. She's bought in. I'm into it. I'm all in. That's the news. Let's talk about
what is happening.
So the Chiefs are 3-1, and they are now in first place in the AFC, on track for that single playoff bye after another wild week of NFL action. Let's start with Miami, who traveled up to Buffalo. Now, Miami was 3-0. They obviously just hung 70 points on the Broncos last week, beat them by 50, but they travel up to Buffalo, New York, and they are humbled by the Buffalo Bills, losing 48-20. The Bills and Dolphins are now both 3-1. The Chiefs hold the tiebreaker over both teams. They have the tiebreaker over Buffalo by virtue of their better record against common opponents, because they both played the Jets, and the Bills lost to the Jets and the Chiefs didn't. And over Miami, thanks to their better conference record, because Miami obviously has an AFC loss and the Chiefs do not. Were you surprised by the outcome of this game?
I was surprised that Miami didn't get more than 20. I wasn't surprised the Bills won, and I even wasn't surprised that the Bills won pretty handily, but 48-20 is an ass kicking. It's a 4-touchdown win. And for a team that looked like they, could do no wrong on offense, the Miami Dolphins, not even just the 70 burger, but I mean, they've been cooking all year. And early on in this game, the first 5 possessions of it were all touchdowns by both teams. And it was 21-14 Bills, and it looked like this thing was going to end up Rams Chiefs 54-51 style, but it wasn't the case. The Bills kept on scoring and the Dolphins just kind of stopped. So I was surprised at that. I was surprised that the Bills kind of figured out, so to speak, that dynamic Miami offense. And I do think that it was, being in Buffalo is one thing. That's a game that the Bills are expected to win, but it doesn't mean that I think that the Bills are a huge step ahead of the Dolphins by any means. And in fact, I would expect when the Bills eventually travel down to South Florida that Miami takes care of business there. I think they're pretty evenly matched across the board. Fun game.
Are these the top 2 threats to the Chiefs in the AFC?
I mean, you'd have to think so, right? Like, outside of these 2 teams, the teams that would immediately contend with these 2 teams for the biggest threats, the Baltimore Ravens, who lost to the Colts. And I mean, they're fun and dynamic. Like, they've got some pieces, but they're injured all the time. They're still injured right now. Other than them, I mean,
that's the only other 3-1 team. That's
right,
the only other
exactly.
3-1 team.
So it doesn't really. Yeah, I just think by virtue of how the first 4 games have gone for everyone in the AFC, you've got to look at the Bills and Dolphins as the 2 biggest threats to the Chiefs. Things will even themselves out, of course, throughout the year. But right now, those 2 teams look like it. I can't even really see anybody else in a decent third other than Baltimore.
Now, you said Chargers, so I want to talk about Chargers. The Chargers dropped 305 yards of total offense on the Raiders. They won the turnover battle 3-1. They had 50 fewer penalty yards than the Raiders did. They were 3 times better at converting on third downs in this game. They sacked Raiders rookie QB Aiden O'Connell, who, by the way, was making his NFL debut in this game after being named the starter on Saturday. 7 times they sacked him.
Oh, so they blew him out.
They blew out the Raiders 24-17 after converting a 3rd and 10 to run out the clock. They had to convert on 3rd and 10 to prevent this game, the ball from going back to the Raiders with a chance to tie this game. This is an absurd result. I went in, I knew what the final score was, and I wasn't watching this game, but I was watching it through Twitter, and I knew that Khalil Mack was going nuts with the 6-sack game, turning back the clock, that he was threatening Derek Thomas's single game sack record. I knew that Justin Herbert was cooking in this game. And I assumed when I looked at the final score that this would be like 40-17 Chargers.
Sure.
This is a one-score game. How's that even possible?
Not only was it a one-score game, but get this. The Chargers had 4th and 1 at their own 34-yard line with 3 minutes and 34 seconds up 7 on the Raiders. And much like last week, the Chargers decide to go for it on their own 34-yard line. Justin Herbert up the middle for no gain. So Vegas takes over. 1st and 10 at the 34 with 3:30 left. They drive down to 1st and goal at the 3 after a conversion on 4th and 10 to Devontae Adams. And Aiden O'Connell throws an interception as a rookie making his NFL debut, is going to do in a big moment. And Asante Samuel gets the ball at the 3, and he's running down the Charger sideline, and he's going to house this thing. There's no one around other than Aiden O'Connell. He's definitely going to take this thing all the way and put the Chargers up 2 touchdowns, except he sees noted genius Brandon Staley waving him to get down with 2:38 left in the game, up 7.
I didn't know Staley told him to do it. That makes
Staley
it so
told
much
him to
funnier.
get down. And so he only goes out to the 11-yard line, even though he had the whole left side with nobody around, and he gets down. And so the Chargers take over the ball there with 2:33 left, with the Raiders having 1 timeout and the 2-minute warning, only up 7. So then they run it. The Raiders call their 3rd timeout. They run it for -1 yards. The 2-minute warning hits. That's why they had 3rd and 10 at their own 11 with 2 minutes left, was because after they intercepted the ball that the Raiders got by virtue of the Chargers being idiots, the Chargers were idiots again. And then the broadcast, with no timeouts, they said, well, a 3rd and 10 at your own 11, you're just going to run this one more time, bleed 40 seconds off the clock, punt it back to the Raiders with 1:20 left, and hope they don't score a touchdown. No, that's they passed it on 3rd and 10 and hit Joshua Palmer deep for 51 yards and iced the game. It was absurd. It was absurd play calling by Staley. It was absurd game management. It was just the Chargers are so funny. They just cannot stop charging. They just can't do it. No matter what's going on, no matter who they're playing, no matter how good they are, no matter how many sacks Khalil Mack has, they just continue to charge.
That's an unbelievable result. I can't believe I didn't hear that Brandon Staley was the one that sort of signaled for him to go down. I heard that he very foolishly took a knee when they could not run out the clock, and that put them in the predicament they were in. But the fact that Brandon Staley ordered the kneel down
He's
is
a fucking doofus.
I mean, that is hilarious, and we'll be very fortunate if he's still coaching the Chargers next year. Let's talk about another team playing in the AFC West, the only one left that we haven't talked about besides the Chiefs. That's the Denver Broncos, 0-3, coming off a 50-point loss, trying to get off the schneid against the fellow 0-3 Chicago Bears, who, of course, were coming off a 31-point defeat of their own at the hands of our Kansas City Chiefs. The Broncos go into Chicago. They fall behind 21 points late or early in the 3rd quarter, and they come back to win the game 31-28. The Broncos get their first win of the season, and I'm into it. I'm way into it. I will walk you through this game. I did watch. I was at a house with some Broncos fans, and I wanted to see them win the game.
Cheering right alongside him.
At halftime, they were down 21-7 at half. They were down 14.5, and then they fell behind 28-7 just after halftime. And I was starting to worry that, Sean Payton had watched the Colorado game the previous day and had seen Caleb Williams, and that this was all a deliberately crafted plan to tank so that the Broncos would get the number 1 pick, and they would be able to draft Caleb Williams, and they would finally have their own superstar quarterback to be able to compete with the Chiefs. And I really thought after this first half performance by the Broncos that is what was going on. So I was very pleasantly surprised to find out that the Broncos are actually just bad, and that's the reason they're losing all these games. And that's much more comforting to me because they were able to come back in this game. But get a load of these stats. Over the past 2 games, in the first half of the last 2 games, which, by the way, does not include the second half against the Washington Commanders, which, as we discussed last week, they gave up 34 points and a half. And then turned around and did it again in both halves against Miami. This is a completely different stat that will also blow your mind. So over the past 2 games in the first half, they have allowed opposing quarterbacks to go 39 of 40, okay, in the first half. That's 39 completions on 40 pass attempts. And the only incompletion was a Hail Mary at the end of the first half by Justin Fields, where there was no chance it was getting completed anyway. So if you take away the Hail Mary, they allowed Justin Fields and Tua Tagovailoa in the first half of those games to go 39 of 39 for 491 yards and 6 touchdowns. Now, they obviously came back to win this game. But even if you look at the totality of these 2 games, Tua and Justin Fields combined to go 46 of 51. And again, that includes a Hail Mary. So we're really counting 46 of 50.
That's a 92% completion percentage.
Sure. for 593 yards, 8 touchdowns, and no interceptions.
I mean, look, and also Tua, yes, he's got the Dolphins offense.
Sure.
He's got Mike McDaniel.
Sure.
He's a good, talented
He's got
quarterback
Tyreek
himself.
Hill. Sure.
But have you seen what Justin Fields has done as a passer, as a Bear?
Yes.
I mean, that is pathetic.
Yes, it is absolutely absurdly pathetic. Just to give you an idea, Justin Fields in his first 3 games completed 64% of his passes, 55% of his passes, and 50% of his passes. Against the Broncos in the first half, again, not counting the Hail Mary, he completed 100% of his passes. And for the game, even counting the Hail Mary, he completed 80% of his passes. Okay, that is bananas. Now, it will probably not surprise you to learn after the stats that I've just given you that the Denver Broncos now possess the worst defense in NFL history through 4 games by DVOA. DVOA is obviously contextualized. It is era adjusted. It's historically adjusted. It is the worst defense ever through 4 games in the history of DVOA, which I think goes back at least to the early 80s at this point.
Yeah.
And that's not all. They're actually also the worst defense in NFL history by yards per game allowed, which, again, is not a contextualized stat or an year-adjusted stat like DVOA is, but it's literal yards per game allowed. They are allowing 461.5 yards per game. They're averaging like almost 500 yards allowed per game.
That's impossible.
And the second worst defense in NFL history by yards allowed per game was also a Sean Payton team, the 2012 New Orleans Saints, who are allowing 440 yards per game. The Broncos are 20 yards worse than the worst defense by yardage allowed in NFL history.
That is, I mean, in watching them, it's not like one of those stats where you're like, really, that team? Like, they don't have any juice on defense.
Nope, they don't.
They can't cover. They can't pass rush. They can't stop the run. I mean, they literally can't do anything. And yeah, I mean, that's exactly how they're playing, is the worst defense of all time right now.
The best part is that they're still not going to be bad enough to out-tank the Bears for Caleb Williams. There is no chance that the Bears are going to win more than like 2 games. They're going to get the number 1 pick in the draft again, unless some team like deliberately tries to win 1 game, because the Bears do have to, Matt Eberflus, that guy's going to get canned no matter what happens this year.
Yes.
But he doesn't know that. He's desperately trying to win like 4 games so he can plead his case to the houses and keep his job. No chance. The Bears are going to get the number 1 pick. The Broncos are not bad enough, despite being the worst defense ever.
You know who's on pace to get the number 2 pick?
The Bears.
The Bears, by virtue of the Carolina Panthers. So Bears are sitting pretty at 1 and 2 right now. They're just going to double dip on Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison. And
sure. And they'll be good next year. They'll be better than the Broncos next year.
Everyone will be better than the Broncos next year.
Yeah, true. Let's talk about a team that is currently tied with the Broncos in the standings. The Cincinnati Bengals.
Oh,
boom.
Sucks to be both of them.
The Bengals got absolutely waxed by the Tennessee Titans in Nashville, 27-3. They fall to 1-3. Yeah, let's discuss. So Joe Burrow, not healthy. First quarterback in NFL history to attempt 150 or more passes in his team's first 4 games, and average under 5 yards per attempt. Okay. Over 150 passes attempted, less than 5 yards per attempt. Extremely bad. Clearly not healthy. And yet, when I tuned into this game, after the Broncos had completed their comeback, I saw that Joe Burrow was still in the game, throwing passes deep into the fourth quarter, down 24 points with a serious calf injury, which is utterly absurd. I don't know what the Bengals are doing. T. Higgins has a broken rib. He said he's going to try and play through it, but guess what? That guy's a free agent next year. And if the Bengals are 1-4 or 1-5, I bet T. Higgins isn't going to try and play through that broken rib.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
Yep.
Jamar Chase was asked after the game about his thoughts on the current situation, and he said, "I'm open. I'm always fucking open." And that was his comment on what is going on with the Bengals offense right now. So, incredible. I haven't even mentioned the fact that their franchise left tackle, Orlando Brown Jr., is an absolute sieve and was getting beaten by an undrafted free agent like a drum against the Titans on Sunday. What a time to be alive.
Well, now you have mentioned it. It's been a complete and total collapse. I don't think anyone could name a team maybe other than the Broncos as being the most disappointing team in the NFL so far. And not even really the Broncos, because even though the Broncos were delusional and expecting to compete,
Sure,
no one else really saw.
Broncos fans thought they were going to compete, but nobody else did.
Nobody else did. But everyone, I mean, everyone just thought that the top of the AFC was going to be Bills, Chiefs, Bengals in some order. I mean, those were the three teams, and two of them are doing exactly what people thought they were going to. And the third one is not only not at the top. I mean, if they were 2-2 right now, we'd be like, man, can't believe the Bengals already have 2 losses. Even if they were playing fine, they would still be a disappointment. They are losing games. They are playing like shit. They are injured. They're frustrated. They're big, as you said, big free agent acquisition is a detriment to the team. It's not even that he's playing average. He's poor. He's playing poor. I mean, what more can go wrong for the? Oh yeah, that's right. They're poor now. They paid Joe Burrow, and they're still losing games. They're losing more games than when they didn't pay him. I mean, it's just, you just hate to see it from such a lovely bunch of guys over there in Cincinnati and a lovely fan base in the Cincinnati Bengals. But time comes for all of us, and I guess your one Super Bowl appearance is going to have to last you about another 20 years or so.
Yeah, that Bengals dynasty, it really it didn't get off the ground. What a shame. Let's talk about the Chiefs win this week. Chiefs traveled to New York City, well, New Jersey, to take on the
East Rutherford, New Jersey,
East Rutherford, New Jersey, to take on the New York Jets. Taylor Swift, of course, was in attendance with all of her attendant people, her friends. Hugh Jackman, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan Reynolds, the lovely Blake Lively, Jake from State Farm, Donna Kelsey, a whole host of celebrities. Anthony from Queer Eye was also there. Your thoughts on this game, understanding that the Chiefs did win, and they did get a victory, and they did go home with, another win in the win column.
It pretty much played out exactly like Super Bowl 57 in a lot of ways. Although instead of the Chiefs coming back from a deficit, they were up big. And then when the Jets came back, the end of this game, really the fourth quarter, was extremely similar with the penalty and the slide at the goal line and all that type of stuff. The only difference is that the Eagles were a damn good football team, and the Jets, while they have a damn good defense, were not expected to play with the Chiefs in this game. 9.5 or 9 or wherever you put the line at. That's a pretty healthy line to have. And the Chiefs just kind of did, Patrick Mahomes made good TV. That's what he said. He doesn't win blowouts. That's what he does. And that's what this was.
Yeah, it sure was. Let's talk about the numbers, the figures. We got another week and another milestone for QB1 Patrick Mahomes, a week after becoming the fastest player in NFL history to reach 25,000 passing yards, becomes the fastest player in NFL history to reach 200 passing touchdowns. It took him 84 games, which beats Dan Marino's record by 5 games. We talked about this last week, but Mahomes was behind Marino's pace, 20 or 30 games ago. And during his little mini slump in 2021, where he was not playing well for 6 weeks, the only time he's ever really had a slump in his entire career, Marino blew past him and was comfortably ahead. And since then, it's been all Mahomes to the point where he beats Marino to 25,000 passing yards by 5 games, or I think it was 5 games. He beats him to 200 passing yards by 5 games. Incredible. I mean, what can you say about Patrick Mahomes except he's the GOAT?
He is the GOAT. He's absolutely the GOAT. He stacks numbers the way that no one, not even people in this era, we always have to kind of remind people that, yes, while it is a passing era and all that's being said, if it were just a product of the era, the other guys would be doing it. The fact is, none of the other guys are doing it, because it's more than, you have to be more than just, a product of your era to put up the numbers that he's putting up. And we're very lucky.
Patrick Mahomes, through 4 games, has 154 yards rushing. It's the most rushing yards he's had through any 4-game start to his career. He had 53 in 2018, 64 in 19, 108 in 20, 92 in 21, and 64 in 22. This is his 4-game high by far. His previous high was that 108 or 102 to start 20, right in that 100-yard range. Yep. He's comfortably 50 yards past that. So, it's good, I guess. It's kind of a double-edged sword, but he is on pace to shatter his previous high in rushing yards for a season through 4 games.
He is. And what comes with running a lot is that first down conversions, his previous best 4-game stretch was 7 in any 4 games of rushing. He has 12 in these 4 games. So, he's doing what he can. Guys aren't getting open, I guess. And so he's taking off running, and he's pretty good at it.
He is. And his previous career high for a season for rushing yards was 358, which he did last year, 381, which he did in 2021. And obviously the Chiefs went through some struggles on offense in 2021. And so, it's a little bit odd to think of the Chiefs as struggling. We'll talk about the game, obviously, because they racked up 400 yards of offense and would have scored 30 points in this game against a good Jets defense if he had, gone in the end zone instead of taking a knee at the end of the game. But just an interesting little factoid to throw at you there. Here's another one. This is potpourri. This has no statistical value whatsoever, but it's interesting. Zach Wilson, the New York Jets, is the only opposing quarterback to have more completions, more passing yards, more touchdown passes, and fewer interceptions than Patrick Mahomes in a Mahomes start, college or pro, including postseason. So he is the first quarterback to oppose Patrick Mahomes in a college or NFL game at any level who has had more completions, more yards, more touchdowns, and fewer interceptions than Patrick Mahomes. Zach Wilson.
Exactly the person that I would have guessed if you had said out of all 127 quarterbacks Mahomes has ever gone up against, who sweeps those 4 categories, I would have said why. Second overall pick out of BYU, Zach Wilson, of course.
Sure, of course. It's a fascinating, again, it's just, first of all, that is a wild stat. And
wild.
It doesn't mean anything, but it's crazy that had never happened, that no quarterback had ever outperformed him in all those categories before. That speaks to his excellence, obviously. And then it was Zach Wilson for the Jets. And the Chiefs still won the game, which is great for us. Now, we were talking about his rushing stats, and obviously we were both inspired by, Patrick Mahomes' legs, his feet.
As we are every day.
But you pulled some numbers, some figures of your own.
I did. I went back and looked at every time he is scrambled in the 4th quarter or overtime of a 1-score game, either winning or losing, but any game within 8 points, on 3rd or 4th down, so in a money down. And he's done that 23 times in his NFL career. And of those 23 scrambles, he picked up the first down on the scramble 17 times, which is a ridiculously high conversion rate.
Yeah, pretty good.
Pretty good. And then of the 6 times that he came up just short on the 3rd down scramble, on the first one, he got the 4th down conversion on the next play, moved into field goal range for a game-winning overtime field goal. On the second one, he kicked a field goal on that 4th down, and the Chiefs won by 9. On the third one, they kicked a field goal, and the Chiefs won by 6. On the 4th time he was short, they got the ensuing 4th down. They scored a touchdown. They won the game by 4 points. On the 5th one, they did get the 4th down. They did score a touchdown to go up 51-47 in a game you well remember. They did lose that game 54-51. And then on the 6th one, they kicked a field goal to go up 20-17 and then gave up a touchdown and lost the game 24-20. So all that's to say that, the 2 games that he lost of those 6 times that he didn't scramble for the first down in a big moment were not lost because of any failed scramble attempts. They always kept the drive moving even after that. When he takes off running, just take it to the bank. Just know that Patrick Mahomes is going to get the Chiefs to where they need to go. And that's further emphasized by this one, which I thought was crazier. So since 1994, there are, this is so stupid, first down rushes on 3rd or 4th and 15 or longer in the 4th quarter of overtime of a 1-score game.
3rd or 4th and incredibly long.
And 15 plus. So Patrick Mahomes has 3 of those 3rd down conversions, which you think, since 1994, I'm sure a bunch of players have. No one else has more than 1. There's a list of about 15 guys, some running backs, some quarterbacks that have. And
this is not restricted to quarterbacks.
It's not. This is about 15 players that have 1 career rush for a first down on 3rd and 4th and long in the 4th quarter or overtime of a 1-score game. Mahomes has done it 3 times. If you go to 17 plus to go, because all 3 of his rushes were in fact 3rd and 17 or longer, it's actually Mahomes and 5 quarterbacks. And all 5 of those quarterbacks have 1 rush attempt, and he has 3 of them. So just nobody does this. Nobody runs with that far to go. Now, I get it. You're probably not going to call a running play, even though several of these players on 3rd and 15 or longer are running backs, because they probably just ran a draw to just give up and punt the ball back. And the running back, who's good at running, who's a professional runner of the football, was able to make something happen and get a first down. But the quarterbacks, you just don't see guys be able to scramble for that distance and pick up the first down very often at all. And he just continues to show everybody that, yes, he's faster than people give him credit for. Yes, he deserves a quarterback spy. He is every bit as dangerous on his legs as any other quarterback that's ever played the game.
Let's talk about the Chiefs system. Hit it.
The Chiefs system. The Chiefs system is, of course, the way that the system that the Chiefs use to come victorious in an NFL football game. They C, create drama. They H, handle adversity. They I, inspire hope. They E, engage physically. They F, finish strong. And they S, separate entirely. So we're going to talk about this game in the context of the Chiefs system. And I mean, first off, of course, create drama. Drama follows the Chiefs at every moment lately. Taylor Swift bringing the A-listers, you talked about them earlier, to the game. They were on Sunday Night Football. Everyone's been talking about the Chiefs for a number of reasons. Of course, they're the defending Super Bowl champs. Of course, Aaron Rodgers was in the house, another much talked about team in the Jets. Just as much drama for a regular season game between two teams that don't really have much of a history. They don't really have beef or anything, but to match up the directions that the two franchises are going in, the Jets, of course, floundering for the billionth year in a row in the first 4 games of the season. The Chiefs, of course, doing exactly what they're doing. I mean, how much more drama could you get than that?
Incredibly dramatic. I love that you added Aaron Rodgers to the list, because just as an aside, this has nothing to do with the game. He has been creating even more drama today. He called Travis Kelce Mr. Pfizer because of his, his COVID-19 booster commercials, which is hilarious because, of course, the owner of the Jets, who he played 4 snaps for, is, Mr. Big Pharma, Woody Johnson himself. But, it is, as you say, it could not help be dramatic, despite the fact that the Jets are not a good team and were not expected to give the Chiefs a close game and didn't for the first quarter of this game. Yes, incredibly dramatic. The Chiefs official Twitter account tweeted out, an all the lights photo of the guys in the stadium. And it just, the New York spotlight, it hits different. It's always going to be dramatic when you're in New York or, East Rutherford, New Jersey.
Sure. Yeah, it's funny. Like, you can't even really name a big moment between the Chiefs and the Jets, like in NFL history for the most part. Like, they just, as two teams that have been in the same conference, like they just have never really crossed paths. They've never really bumped heads with each other. So it's just really funny that despite us not caring at all about the New York Jets, that this had so much build up to it. Of course, H, handle adversity. I don't know. How about a 17-0 first quarter? How about with all the big bright lights and everything going on, Isaiah Pacheco ripping off that big 48-yard touchdown run as the most hyped player on the field, hyped up. I mean, he was, as the New Jersey kid, he was fired up. The defense in that same stretch in the first quarter allowed only 1 first down in 2 Jets drives. They went 3 and out and then 1 first down and 3 and out. Mahomes hits Noah Gray on a 34-yard long touchdown. And I say long, even though it's only 34, because that broke a streak for Mahomes of 25 straight touchdown passes of 20 yards or shorter. So he had been moving the chains. Obviously, the Chiefs are extremely effective at scoring and at moving the ball down the field, but just taking that big chunk for a touchdown. Now he's had 20-yard plus pass plays, but they are no Chiefs wide receivers ever running free in the secondary. Like you see on every other NFL team, everywhere you look on every game, they throw a rainbow because somebody's wide open downfield by himself. And that just never happens for the Chiefs, whether that's people paying closer attention or whether that's a lack of talent on the Chiefs receiving, whatever it is. So Mahomes breaks that streak. He gets a 34-yard touchdown to Noah Gray, puts the Chiefs up 17-0. What'd you think of that first quarter?
I was driving back from Breckenridge in the first quarter, but I did get a chance to, number one, listen to it on Westwood One with, all the great guys that call the games on there. It's usually Harlan, but I don't think it was Harlan on Sunday because I would have remembered that. I did get a chance to watch it though after I got home. Amazing performance by the Chiefs. You mentioned obviously the Noah Gray touchdown being a streak breaker. We're going to talk about this 48-yard touchdown run by Pacheco later in the segment. Spoiler alert, and I will give you some stats about how unusual it was to see a Chiefs running back rip off a 48-yard touchdown run. But it was great to see two chunk plays for touchdowns against a really tough Jets defense. Absolutely handled adversity in that first quarter.
They did. And inspire hope. We'll go ahead and go back to our guy, Isaiah Pacheco. When he runs like this, he gives the offense an element that it just needs. It needs a playmaker besides Travis Kelce. It needs somebody out there that can make a big play out of not a big play. If he can level up this year, I know he's a 7th round running back, but he still has shown that he belongs on the big stage. And I mean, that inspires plenty of hope for me that the offense can kind of find a way to make things work without a superstar wide receiver. If they've got a running back that's capable of stuff like this more often. Now, I guess every game can't be played in East Rutherford, so I don't know if Isaiah Pacheco has this gear in him if he's not in front of friends and family, which is not a knock on him. I mean, that's been shown to inspire plenty of players throughout sports history. But what did you think about this run here by Pacheco and in general, his role on the team and how much hope he inspires in you?
Well, what I loved about the touchdown run was it was 3rd and 1. So this sort of killed two Chiefs specters of Chiefs teams pass in one play, because the Chiefs have struggled in short yardage and they have also struggled to get explosive plays in the run game since the ill-fated decision to draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round. The Chiefs have not had, before Pacheco emerged, kind of down the stretch last year, a really bursty, explosive running back, really since Damian Williams. And I'll, again, share some stats with you later on when we get to our awards. But, just the fact that they lined up and handed the ball off and ran between the tackles on 3rd and short, and it worked, that in itself was hugely encouraging to me. And we've been screaming at the Chiefs to do that more. It's like it's 3rd and short. You have Trey Smith, Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey in the center of your offensive line. Those guys are beasts. They're monsters. And you have Isaiah Pacheco, who is incredibly physical and powerful. And there's no reason why you shouldn't pick up that yard on 3rd and 1, running between the tackles most of the time. That should often work out. And when you can succeed in short yardage, this is why Derrick Henry has so many explosive runs, right? Like they will stack the box on 3rd and short. Yeah. If you get the yard and get into the secondary, there's nobody there. I mean, there's nobody to catch you. They're all up on the line of scrimmage, and that's exactly what happened on this play. The Chiefs obviously were able to get some penetration and blow some guys off the line, but once Pacheco gets into the second level, he's gone because he's got burst and straight line speed, and he was able to outrun guys to the end zone. So that to me inspired a hell of a lot of hope for the offense because I mean, we have not seen it, and I'll again tell you how rare it is when we get to the next segment. It's a sight to behold when that aspect of this offense is added to having the best quarterback in the world.
Yeah, good point about the 3rd and short also, because if anything, that should inspire Andy Reid and Matt Nagy to call plays like that more often. They saw it work. Like, just line up and bully ball them. Like, you guys have a monster line, like you said. And yes, you don't have to do the brotherly shove or anything like that. You don't have to get big monster jumbo, even though I think if any team in the NFL is set to copy the Eagles on that play, it's probably the Chiefs with their interior line and their big ass quarterback that is a dog down there that can push stuff. I mean, like if you let Mahomes get his nose in the ground, you really think he's not going to pick up a yard at any cost? We actually saw, we're not going to really bring this up, but we saw on a dropped snap on 3rd and 1 or 2nd and short, Mahomes picked it up and got his nose in there and picked up the first down himself. It was basically an accidental quarterback sneak. So
proof of concept for the sneak. We can put it back in the playbook.
Exactly. So yes, you're right. That was very inspiring by Pacheco. Engage physically. My note here is Trey Smith, LOL. Just absolutely beclowns some poor Jets defender that I would look up, but I don't want to embarrass him on that Pacheco touchdown. I mean, it was a very physical game in general. The Jets are a physical team, especially when you don't have like a good quarterback and you have a really good defense. You just kind of default to being a physical team and having to kind of play in the mud, so to speak. But no more so of a physical play in this game than that thundering 48-yard touchdown run and the public execution of a Jets secondary player.
Yeah, this was the picture that I had in my mind when I referred to the offensive line getting penetration, the second level, and blowing guys off the line of scrimmage. I mean, Trey Smith gets downfield and lays just an absolute executioner's blow on whoever that poor Jets defender was. RIP him. I'm sure he will never play football again. But this just goes back to the previous point, which is the Chiefs can engage physically at the line of scrimmage. They should be able to win in short yardage. It's been mystifying how they haven't been able to more consistently convert on third and fourth and short over the last couple of years. But I think the interior offensive line and Pacheco, that's the secret sauce. Like, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. You have a big physical back with burst, and you have a monster interior offensive line that can blow people off the ball.
Yeah,
there you go.
No more tight end sneaking. No more, flea flicker or whatever. Like they just did so many. They just tried way too hard on all of those.
And listen, they can still do all those things. But this is the secret. Once teams know that you can and will just line up and run between the tackles on third and short, then they will defend that. And then you can start running off of that and doing the cute stuff off of that if you need to. But you don't have to do it. First, you have to, dare I say it, establish the run.
You do. You did. You said it. After engaging physically, of course, F is finished strong. Things took a turn. We've talked about mostly the beginning part of this game when the Chiefs were doing
that was the fun part.
That was the fun part. Once the Chiefs took that 17-0 lead in the first quarter, we thought everything was just they were gonna beat them 68-0. But
I texted you game over.
Game over. It was game over. I mean, I tweeted game over, OVER. It was over until it wasn't. The Jets ripped off a 20-3 run of their own, aided by, yes, we will say it, some bullshit penalties, including a face mask quote, or it was a face mask, but on Juwan Taylor that, despite it clearly starting at the 1 yard line, was determined on replay to have started in the end zone, which when they asked, I think it was Blandino, maybe, I forget who was on the Sunday night, but they asked him about, the rules explanation, Terry McAulay maybe, and he said that, yeah, he definitely clearly grabs it at the 1, but then he starts to twist and turn it kind of in the end zone.
Get out of here.
But he was only describing what he saw in the replay, not the actual rule. The actual rule is about when it starts. He was saying, yeah, I see that it starts at the 1, but then he twists him in the end zone, and maybe that's what they saw, is kind of how he described. He was basically just trying to say, look, I'm not trying to throw these refs under the bus, but they fucked up major here. And everyone kind of took that explanation on the game as being like, oh, well, if he twisted and turned it in the end zone, then that's when you got to. No, that's not how that play has ever been called. If there's a hold, the hold starts the moment that the player engages with the block before the hold. And if that moment was at the 1, then even if he ends up pulling him into the end zone and pulling him down in the end zone, that's still a penalty outside the end zone. What's
crazy about that call too is that it is well known that refs don't like to call safeties, and they will usually, typically, and I've seen this in my Twitter feed probably 5 times already this season through four weeks of NFL play, where people are saying, NFL refs call a safety challenge. Like they just don't, if they can look at the tape and say, oh, I think this started, at the 1 inch line, they're not going to call a safety. Yep. And in this case, they bent over backwards to call the safety, which is very out of character. Obviously, you don't want to infer ill intent over just pure incompetence, but it was a 17-0 game in prime time. It certainly made things more interesting. I'll put it that way.
It did, because then, of course, the Jets not only get their first points of the game on defense, but then the Chiefs have to punt to them. I mean, it's a double whammy. There was, of course, also, who can forget, the horse collar in quotes here on Derek Nottie, where not only did the call meet none of the requirements of an actual horse collar, But Breece Hall was firmly grasping Nadi's face mask while he was being tackled. It was not only not a horse collar, it was a penalty on the offensive player. But instead, the Jets get a free first down there. They march down, they score a touchdown. I've said this to a bunch of Jets people bitching in my mentions. Good teams don't complain about calls. They win the games. And the Chiefs responded. We're in our finish strong mode. They responded after the Jets tied things up by the defense forcing 3 straight punts on 3 straight Jets possessions. And the offense, they were trying to find their footing. They got down close. They got to the 8-yard line, a short Butker field goal, gave the Chiefs a 23-20 lead with 10:54 left in the game. That was them trying to finish this game strong.
And, they did finish strong. I mean, we've got obviously the separate entirely aspect that we have to talk about, which will be the very end of the game. But this was a strong performance by the Chiefs defense after being put in adversity by, yes, some questionable calls by the officiating, and frankly, a level of play from Zach Wilson that I'm sure the defense did not anticipate.
Unheard of.
And could not have anticipated, because this was probably his best game as an NFL player. And if you listen to Chris Collinsworth, it was the best game by any NFL player ever in the history of the league.
Yes,
he was playing out of his mind, and Chris was loving every minute of it. But I mean, listen, you've got to be, and I think we've talked about this a little bit with respect to, Jalen Hurts' performance in the Super Bowl. Like, if you're a defense and you've been game planning, based on what you've seen a player do in the past, and you get into a game situation and the player is doing things that you've never seen them do, of course that's going to leave you a little bit flat-footed, right? Like, we've never seen this on film. We've never seen him make this throw. We've never seen him throw into this window. We've never seen him throw with this level of accuracy down the field, right?
Dialed in.
Of course that's going to put you on your heels a little bit, because that's not something that you're prepared for, and not just schematically, but just literally, like, mentally. This guy has leveled up before our very eyes. So I think that has to be taken into account too, that the Broncos, who play the Jets this week, they will probably prepare for Zach Wilson differently than the Chiefs prepared for him. Now, because it's the Broncos, they're still going to allow him to start the game 20 for 20, and they're going to give up 35 points in the first half to the Jets. But definitely a strong finish for our Chiefs, especially.
Yeah. It's kind of like when a rookie quarterback comes on the scene and he's a talented quarterback, but just people don't have tape and all that stuff. Stuff we heard early on in Mahomes' career, where like he gets out there and like you've got some calls and you've got some things that you're expecting him to be able to do and be able to not do. And when he defies that as a defense, you just have to tip your cap. Okay. We called some stuff here that we covered all the underneath stuff because we know you can't hit the deep back shoulder fade, and you hit it. Like, game recognized game, that's fine. But at the end of the day, the Chiefs defense, they stepped up, they played their asses off, and now we get to separate entirely. And there are several aspects when the Chiefs separated entirely this game. Separate entirely, first, is what the ball did from Zach Wilson's hands on the ensuing Jets drive. That the drive had made it across midfield. He took the snap but wasn't looking at the ball. He was looking for where he was going to throw, and it just plain dropped on the ground, and it was scooped up by Tershawn Wharton for the Chiefs. And that was their only takeaway of the game, was that Tershawn Wharton pickup. So separate entirely is also what Patrick Mahomes did on a 3rd and 23 scramble with 6:25 to go, as we detailed earlier on his ridiculous 3rd and long scrambling. He left the Jets defense in the dust for one of his patented, just back-breaking 3rd down runs. There was no hold. Everyone who knows ball recognizes the fact that Donovan Smith was just owning the Jets rusher, who basically gave up on this play. And
we'll talk about that.
We will talk about that. But while we're on that play, just have to note that was a great run by Patrick. And then separate entirely is what Marquez Valdez-Scantling attempted to do on 3rd and 20, but Sauce Gardner, in his, he's a very good player, but he refused to let MVS separate entirely. He grabbed him around the neck, allowing the Chiefs to convert another devastatingly long 3rd down. And finally, separate entirely is what Mahomes did on 3rd and 8 from the 11-yard line at the 2-minute warning. escaping out of the pocket, scrambling to his left, seeing a wide open end zone that would have put the Chiefs up 10, but instead knows ball and goes down to ensure that the Chiefs walk out of MetLife Stadium with a very hard-fought W. The Chiefs separated entirely in these last 6 minutes a million times.
Church mode for Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if that was called or if that was just something that I'm sure it was, because obviously the Chiefs are very aware of these situations. But, callback to, Brandon Staley earlier in this episode,
Yes.
telling his player to go down when there's 2.5 minutes left in the game.
On his own 11-yard
line.
line.
And the other side has a timeout left.
Yeah.
It just goes to show the difference between a well-coached team with players who know ball and a team that's poorly coached whose players do not know ball. And, like you said, a lot of aspects to this. I think the thing that stands out to me is the Chiefs not giving the ball back. I mean, getting the ball back with 7 minutes left in the game and running out the clock completely. 7:24 is when they got the ball back, and the Jets never got the ball, and they had all their timeouts. You start the drive at 7:24, and they started the drive. Now, obviously, the penalties backed them up. They started this drive on the Jets' 47-yard line.
It's impossible.
And the Jets had
to have a 45-yard drive that lasts 7 minutes.
And they ran out the clock and they didn't score. I mean, it's there can't have been too many times in NFL history that's happened. No. But the Chiefs did it because that's what it took to win the game. And that's all the Chiefs care about. Obviously, a lot of people crying about Patrick Mahomes not taking the touchdown, which would have allowed the Chiefs to cover. Even some conspiracy theorists out there, accusing Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs, of point shaving. If you bet the over/under, or if you bet the point spread on Chiefs games, you're a fool, because we don't care about the point spread. We only care about winning the game, and that's what the Chiefs did. Separated entirely, a hard-fought win, and I loved that he slid down and then immediately popped up, dropped the ball, and did the are you not entertained pose. Incredible. I mean, he is such a showman, but he's also a perfect, humble superstar and the GOAT.
We're very
love
lucky.
him. We're going to debut a new segment to follow the Chief system today, and it's called
Objection! Hearsay! That's lawyer talk.
I know a lot about the law and various other lawyerings, and that includes statutory interpretation, which essentially is what we're doing with the NFL rulebook. So let's talk about the NFL rulebook. You talked about the 3rd and 23 run that put an absolute dagger in the heart of the New York Jets by Patrick Mahomes. So let's talk about Donovan Smith and Jeremiah Johnson on display. This was not called a hold, and there were so many irate pundits out there, including somebody from Barstool, that called it the worst missed call in NFL history, that just could not fathom how this play was not a hold. Now, this is not the first time. This is the first time that we're doing this segment, but this is not the first time that the Chiefs have caused a national audience to go completely insane over a rule that everyone seemed to know and understand before the Chiefs benefited from the rule being called the same way that it is always called and is commonly understood. We saw it on opening night when Jawan Taylor was lining up and doing his thing the same way that he has for the last 4 years.
Has that ruined offensive line alignment for you? It's completely ruined it for me. Every game I see the center up top and all 4 guards and tackles, a full person behind him, and no one gives a fuck.
It's utterly absurd. But it's all because Chris Collinsworth had to get butthurt about the way that Jawan Taylor specifically was lining up in a nationally televised game. The game before that, of course, it was defensive holding. And, not what a defensive hold is, but whether or not a defensive hold should be called inside.
When should you call a penalty?
When should you penalize a player for committing an obvious foul? Should you do it inside 2 minutes left to play in the Super Bowl? And the game before that, the AFC Championship game, sure, Patrick Mahomes was hit out of bounds, and that's always roughing the passer, but should you call roughing the passer, inside of 30 seconds in a critical game that's going to send a team to the Super Bowl? And anyway, I digress. Let's talk about the rules. So I'm going to quote here from the NFL rulebook. It is a foul if an offensive blocker uses his hands or arms to materially restrict or alter the defender's path or angle of pursuit. It is a foul regardless of whether the blocker's hands are inside or outside the frame of the defender's body. Material restrictions include, but are not limited to, grabbing or tackling an opponent, hooking, jerking, twisting, or turning him, or pulling him to the ground. Now, a lot of people fixate on this language. It is a foul regardless of whether the blocker's hands are inside or outside the frame of the defender's body. And the reason that a lot of people were fixating on this is because a lot of former NFL players, including six-time Pro Bowl defensive lineman Gerald McCoy, pointed out that Smith's hands were inside Johnson's frame. That's why they're saying, essentially, this isn't going to get called a hold because his hands are inside the frame. And people were saying, look at the rule, you idiot, Gerald McCoy. I know you're a six-time Pro Bowl defensive lineman that played in the NFL and was an All-Pro.
And didn't play for the Chiefs, so has no bias there.
And didn't play for the Chiefs, and again, is a defensive tackle, not an offensive tackle. But look, dumbass, Gerald McCoy, dumbass. Look, it says in the rule it's a foul regardless of whether his hands are inside or outside the frame. But see, that ignores a critical part of this rule, really the only critical part of the holding rule for offensive holding, and that is this line: materially restrict or alter the defender's path or angle of pursuit. So going to the film here. And again, I'm not a film expert, but I am a law expert, and I do know a lot about the law. So Johnson starts his rush to the inside of Donovan Smith, and then he hesitates. You can see him pause for a split second, and then he goes straight into Donovan Smith, okay? He doesn't try to get the outside edge. He tries to go through him. He's essentially trying to bull rush him. He's not trying to get the outside edge. He's trying to go through. And Smith immediately locks him up. And listen, again, I'm not a film expert, but if you watch Johnson's feet, if you watch where he puts his feet, it's never obvious to me that he's trying to get outside on Donovan Smith, that he's trying to go around the edge. So if you're trying to go straight through me, how is me tugging your jersey from any angle going to materially restrict or alter your path? You're trying to go directly through me. You're facing me. We're squared up. If I tug on your jersey on either side, how's that going to materially restrict your path to go directly through me? It isn't.
I would argue that it would help your path because you're trying to go in a path that doesn't exist. Right. And the offensive player is saying, here, you could try one path that does exist on the side.
Yeah, let me pull you in this direction where I'm not blocking you, right? Like it's just the physics of that do not work. They don't apply. So in this case, whatever grabbing is going on, 99.9% of the time, when the tackle has his hands inside the defender, that defender has nowhere to go but through the tackle. And in that scenario, grabbing onto the defender isn't going to materially restrict his path, and it's not a hold. So that's really where these players are getting at, I think, from reading the rule as it is constructed, the letter of the law. Now, there's a point in this play where Jeremiah Johnson does get outside Smith's frame on the edge, and Patrick Mahomes is still in the pocket. He had forever in the pocket in this play. I mean, he was in the pocket for like 8 seconds before he decides to scramble. I did not count, but it felt like an extremely long time. So you hear former players and referees say that Johnson quit on the play. If you watch the tape, that's clearly true. Where does he put his feet, Taylor?
Straight nowhere. I mean, just
they're not moving.
Down.
Yeah, they're not moving.
Right.
He's not trying to get around the edge. So at the point where he's now on the outside, he's kind of on the outside edge of Donovan Smith, but he's not moving. He's not trying to get around him. And so
he's pouting.
Exactly right. And in fact, he starts beating Smith's helmet with his hand instead of trying to move his feet and get around the edge. So where does it say in the rule that if a defender gives up, it's not holding? Nowhere. But in fact, it does say that in the rule because, again, it says in order to hold, you have to materially restrict or alter the defender's path or angle of pursuit. If a defender is not moving, he doesn't have a path. If he's not pursuing, he's not pursuing, he by definition does not have an angle of pursuit.
Oh shit!
And
you're good
if he doesn't have a path and he doesn't have an angle of pursuit, his angle of pursuit can't be materially restricted because he's not doing either of those things, which means he can't be held, which means it wasn't a foul, which means it was not a hold. Lawyered. Let's talk about our awards. Now, for those of you who are new to this segment, we have 3 different types of awards. We have 5-star men. Who, through their play, say, I'm a 5-star man. We have trash men.
I'm the trash man.
I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
Who are eating garbage all over the field. And we have wild cards.
Wild card, bitches! Yeah!
Who are capable of anything. I will kick this off with my 5-star man, and it's got to be Mr. New Jersey himself, Isaiah Pacheco. In his return to the Garden State, that's what they call New Jersey, he drops 20 carries for 115 yards and a touchdown. On the ground, another 43 yards on 3 receptions through the air. He caught all 3 of his targets. I promised some stats on that 48-yard touchdown run. This is the longest rushing touchdown for the Chiefs since Derek Gore had a 51-yard touchdown against the Raiders in December of 2021. And as you will recall,
magical run.
That was deep into garbage time. I mean, the Chiefs were blowing out the Raiders by 30 points.
I mean, it's Derek Gore.
When Derek Gore broke, exactly right. His 4th-string running back was crushing this 51-yard touchdown. Before that, you have to go back to Damian Williams in 2019, who had a pair of 80-plus yard touchdown runs that season. Obviously, Tyreek Hill very memorably catching him on both of those touchdowns from behind, just to prove that he's the fastest guy on the team. But that's how rare it is to see the Chiefs break a long touchdown run like that. It's happened once 2 years ago, and before that, it was 2 more years before that. So it's not very common to see this kind of explosiveness. And this is the difference between Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. This was Isaiah Pacheco's 6th gain of 30-plus yards from scrimmage, pass or rush, or catch or rush, I should say, reception or rush, in his career from scrimmage in 291 career touches. That includes the playoffs. So 6 times in 291 touches, he's taken the ball 30-plus yards. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has 2 30-plus yard plays from scrimmage in 506 career touches. 2. He has a third of the number of 30-yard explosive plays that Pacheco does in 40% more touches in his career. That's absurd. Isaiah Pacheco is a 5-star man. He was an absolute beast in this game. Running backs don't matter, but the Chiefs do not win this game without Pacheco playing like he did on Sunday.
Incredible. That's a rate of about 2% of Pacheco's touches go for 30-plus and 0.3% of CEH's touches. So
it's crazy.
Pretty significant difference there. As I said earlier in the show, the Chiefs need a playmaker, and Pacheco sure has shown himself to be that. Great nomination for 5-star man. I will go with a man that hasn't missed a kick this year. Of course, that's Harrison Butker. He is 8 for 8 so far on field goals. He is 11 for 11 on extra points, which is more impressive than the field goals because, of course, that was always a bit of an issue with him. He has actually hit 31 straight extra points.
Wow.
To about mid last year. So issues are behind him.
He's fixed.
He's fixed. He is extremely good. The Chiefs are very lucky that they picked Butker off of the practice squad of the Carolina Panthers. Brett Veach does no wrong. Harrison Butker, you are my 5-star man.
It's a great nomination. Harrison has been clutch. I mean, I guess when you kick a team to the Super Bowl and then fire off the game-winning kick in the Super Bowl, you're a different man, and he looks like a different man. He looks like a 5-star man through and through. Let's turn to the trash men, and I think you probably already know where I'm going with this based on 5-star man selection, and also based on the fact that we vowed to make Clyde Edwards-Helaire the trash man every game that he's more than nominally involved. He was nominally involved in this game, but he still was so bad that I have to give it my trash man award. It's nothing personal, but 3 carries for 12 yards, 1 reception for 1 yard receiving. And this is the play that I fixate on. This was a microcosm of his whole career. He gets this short pass on 2nd and 8, and he has room to run. And it just looks like he's moving in quicksand. Like he just has he has no burst. And if you were to put Clyde Edwards-Helaire, on a field with me or you, yeah, he would look bursty as hell. But when you put him on a field with other NFL football players, he looks just incredibly slow and limited. And Creed Humphrey actually blows his block on this play. CJ Mosley is able to shed the block. He's able to get from, the center position where Creed has him locked up. And he sheds the block and is able to come all the way across to the edge, outside the numbers to stuff Clyde for a 1 yard gain. I mean, this play watching it in real time, it felt like any other running back in the National Football League could have taken that for, if not a first down, very close to the first down marker. Clyde got 1 yard on this. Absolute trash man behavior. You hate to see it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, you hate to see it, except for that you see it every game. Like
Right.
at a certain point, it just becomes who he is. He's
Sure.
just not a very good football player, which is
No.
too bad. Like you said, it's not personal. This is all about what we're seeing on film, and he just doesn't give the Chiefs an advantage. Now, of those 4 touches that he had, 3 rushes and 1 catch, you know how many snaps he had in this game? 6.
Yeah.
So, like, when he's out there,
They're giving
the
him the
Chiefs
ball.
are like, we got to give the ball to Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
That's
He only played 6 snaps, and that's what
that's
they're
not
doing
good.
with him. It's
That's not good.
It's a poor plan on the Chiefs' offense part. Every time he touches the ball, he is a drive killer. I mean, he is. He is. It's a waste of a play, and even if it works, it's going to work at such a low rate that it's not worth trying. I'm just over him. I'm just over him.
And a waste of a player too, because again, we've talked about this. There's been no momentum on this, but like until Nick Chubb went down with a season-ending injury, Kareem Hunt was available. I get that maybe the Chiefs don't want Kareem Hunt because of their past together. Leonard Fournette is still a free agent. Like, you're telling me that Leonard Fournette coming off his couch isn't going to have more burst than Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Because I can't imagine that is true. It just he should not be in the game. Shouldn't be on the active roster.
No, he shouldn't. I would rather Deneric Prince have his roster spot. I mean, it's just, we know what we're going to get with him, and what we're going to get isn't helpful. So find someone that we don't know what you're going to get from him and see if it's going to be helpful or not.
Sure.
And
put Prince or P. Ryan out there.
Sure. Put anybody. I mean, it's crazy. Go trade for Jonathan Taylor. I don't care. Just like do something other than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm over it. My trash man, Sky Moore.
Yeah.
Who's Sky Moore? Where has this player been his entire career? He's just not out there. I mean, he's out there, but he's just not getting open, and
he's not present.
He's not catching it. He's not doing anything with it. It's too bad. We really thought this guy was going to take a leap forward this year. And honestly, I mean, he's almost at half of his yards from last year. He's at 112 yards this year. He was at 250 last year. But like, that's not enough. That's not enough for a second round pick. That's not enough for a wide receiver that plays a ton of snaps. Sky Moore was the second most snaps on the team at wide receiver behind Justin Watson at 41 in this game, and was a complete non-factor.
Yeah, on a per snap basis, his production actually has regressed. He wasn't getting on the field last year, but he is getting on the field this year, and he still isn't producing. And that's, I think, what's disappointing to me is that, aside from, the big catch in week 2 against the Jags to seal the game, which we really thought would be hopefully a momentum builder for him, it hasn't happened that way.
No, that's 50 something of his 112 yards on the season in one play, one broken play where all he had to do was run around and Pat found him. I mean, it's unfortunate. Hopefully things continue to, they try to get him to figure it out, but like they don't really have any other options. So I'm sure they're just going to keep throwing him out there. But just an unfortunate situation with Sky.
Give me your wild card.
So my wild card this game is a player that is capable of doing anything possible to set the team back, and is also capable of being a really good offensive lineman. And that's Juwan Taylor. Juwan Taylor, the second most famous Taylor in the building that night, was just, there's an element of it. I'm very clearly on the side of liking the player and wanting things to work out, and feeling bad that he's getting bullied by the NFL refs. Absolutely. That's the correct word for it. But the hold and the face mask and he's the most penalized player in the NFL, and he has been since 2021, the most penalized player in the NFL. And while some of that bullshit this year was certainly on the alignment stuff, there's also just an element of sloppiness. There's an element of his whole, I've got to get a jump on the snap count. I've got to line up deep, and I've got to do all the stuff that he has to do. Like, is it really? I don't know. I don't play offensive line in the NFL, but is it that hard to just try and counter adjust for a couple games until they give it a rest? Like, do you really have to continue? Now, to his credit, in this game on national television, he was not penalized for lining up illegally or false starting. So,
Sure,
move in the right direction there for sure. Progress. He still got a penalty for a hold and a penalty for a face mask. It just, I need him to do better, but he's very highly graded in his pass blocking and run blocking numbers. I mean, when he's playing football and when the flags aren't involved, I love Juwan Taylor as a right tackle. I think in a pinch, if something happened to Donovan Smith and they had to move Juwan over to left tackle, I'd feel fine with that. I mean, I really feel comfortable with him being a tackle on this team. I just need to see a little bit more care involved as far as the penalties.
Wow, that sounds really similar in a lot of ways to my wildcard pick, Rashee Rice.
Yes.
Another drop for Rashee Rice, his fourth of the year. That is second in the league. His drop percentage, 21.1 drop percentage, is third worst in the NFL, behind only Joe Mixon, which is hilarious because how on earth is a running back dropping 20% of his passes thrown to him? They're literally like 3-yard dump offs. And Kadarius Toney, who has the worst drop rate in the league. Oof. 23% for Kadarius Toney. I'm pretty sure that was all in the first game of the year, but in any case. On the other hand, Rashee Rice is 14th in PFF grade among wide receivers, which is tied with Mike Evans.
Wow.
He pulled off in this game an absolute monster catch where he got sandwiched and not only held onto the ball, despite the fact that this was an extremely difficult catch, unlike the one that he dropped earlier in the game, but was able to get some serious yak on this play, got an 18-yard gain. I mean, he's getting open, especially against zone. He's earning targets and he's earning a higher snap share in the offense. He just needs to hold on to the ball. And the other true wild card behavior in this game was late in the fourth quarter in this game on the Chiefs field goal drive that put them up in the game. He was brought down 3 yards short of the first down marker. This was the play that you alluded to earlier where they got deep into the red zone and had to kick. And he signaled for a first down. He got up and signaled for a first down, even though he was like 4 yards short of the line of game. That's wild card behavior. That's
super wild card.
That's somebody who is capable of anything. So that's my wild card, Rashee Rice. Can't wait to see more from him.
Rice is second on the team in targets behind Travis Kelce. Kelce has 26. Rashee is second with 19. So, I mean, he's earning his targets. He's doing stuff. And if he had scored 2 touchdowns in the game last week where he went down at the half-yard line, I mean, he'd be having himself a nice little season so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think by the end of the season and certainly come playoff time, we're going to be looking at Rashee Rice, the wide receiver one on this team. At least that's my hope. Let's preview this game. The Chiefs are traveling to Minnesota to take on the Minnesota Vikings, the 1-3 Minnesota Vikings, who just pick up their first win of the season after an 0-3 start. Some storylines to watch in this game. This is the big one. The Vikings are the only NFL team besides the Chiefs that Patrick Mahomes has never beaten. Not coincidentally, they are also the only NFL team he has never faced, other than the Chiefs, of course. The Chiefs last played the Vikings in 2019. That was when Mahomes obviously was out with the knee injury that he suffered on that Thursday Night Football game in Denver that we infamously attended and left at halftime. But that was the only time that the Chiefs have played the Vikings in the Patrick Mahomes era, and he was not in the game. Matt Moore and the boys got that one done, got the dub. So the Chiefs did win that matchup, but this will be an opportunity for Patrick to cross the 31st team off of his victory list.
31st and final.
That's exactly right. He will never beat all of the teams in the NFL, and we hope that he doesn't. We've got a little story developing here, and we're recording this on a Tuesday. I don't think we found out that Taylor Swift was going to be in attendance for the Sunday night game until Wednesday or Thursday. It was reported earlier in the week. Obviously, when she showed up at the game in Kansas City, it was morning of that we found out. We haven't heard that she's going to be at the game this week, and Vikings cornerback Byron Murphy has he's called his shot. This is bizarre behavior, but he said he's planning to trash talk Travis Kelce in their game Sunday with stuff related to Taylor Swift. He told ESPN reporter, is it Todd Seifert, Adam Seifert? I don't know his first name, but Seifert ESPN. He said, Kevin, sure. That sounds perfectly right. Kevin Seifert. He says, I'm going to say something to him to get him going. Is she going to come to the game? We're locked in, but that would be something. I've been watching her since I was a kid. That would be cool for sure. Not for him, because we're going to try to get our hands on him in front of her. I just this is bizarre behavior. I like it because I think it's funny. I mean, it's great that it's a national story. And I think it's going to reach a point where it's more distracting for the other team than it is for the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs are going to play in front of Taylor Swift every week. The other teams aren't going to do that. They're going to be the ones looking up at the suite and they're going to be like, oh my God, it's Taylor Swift. She's here. We're going to play tight because, she's a huge celebrity and we're not used to this. And eventually it's going to be old hat for the Chiefs. We're not there yet. But this is just bizarre behavior. I hope that they mic him or Travis Kelce up, so that we get some of this trash talk, if we can call it that. What is he even going to say?
You like girly music? I don't know. I mean, it's they're kids out there. You have to remember they're in their 20s, almost all of them, other than Travis Kelce. And I think in general, the Vikings, who are 1-3, he's probably just trying to come out and give a macho man, I'm not scared of this situation and I'm going to talk some shit because it's fun. And I don't know. I don't take much from his comments. I don't think she's going to be in attendance. I just feel like Minnesota, going to a Chiefs game, sure. Going to New York where she lives, sure. Sunday Night Football, sure. All that stuff. All made sense. Going to a Sunday game against the Vikings,
if she shows up to that game, they're getting married,
Yeah, but
if she has that level of commitment.
Yeah, they're absolutely getting married. You're right. If she's going to go to every game, if she's going to the Vikings game, she's going to every game.
Sure.
That means that from now on, until both of them die happy and old at the age of 100, she's going to go to every Chiefs game, which is great and fun and hilarious.
Yeah, that would be a cool story, but it's probably
I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think yet. Now, eventually, I do think they're going to be happily ever after, and she's going to go to every Chiefs game. But for now, they're still early on in things. They're still early days, and I just feel like it's a good opportunity for them to kind of be like, yeah, this is cool. And she probably, I would guess, is going to show up to several more Chiefs games throughout the year. That would be a big shock if she didn't. But I just don't think going bap right off the bat with 1, 2, 3 makes a lot of sense. So that's my analysis on whether I think T Swift is going to be in attendance at US Bank Field. But I mean, the trash talk here, okay, what are you going to say, bro? Travis Kelce's heard everything before. If anything, you're just going to fire the future Hall of Famer up. Good luck doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Your trash talk is, oh yeah, you're dating Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Jokes on you guys.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's the trash talk he's going to be talking on everybody else, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Trav's going to bring Taylor up before anyone else will.
Right.
He's going to go out there being like, "You look up in the box, you see what I got there?" Yeah,
right.
I also have storyline to watch here. Suck it, Super Bowl IV losers.
Boom, nailed it.
Got him.
Yeah. Listen, the Chiefs game in Super Bowl IV, their defeat over the Vikings. That was the first time these two teams ever played each other, and so that was the tone that the Chiefs set early on in this storied rivalry. I mean, they play each other rarely, but listen, the Chiefs will always have
game ever played.
That's right. The Chiefs will always have that one up over the Minnesota Vikings. Let's talk about what will happen when the Chiefs have the ball. Chiefs fell slightly in offensive DVOA. They were 6th. They dropped to 8th after an uneven performance against the Jets. It feels like every week this year, there's been something a little bit off, except against the Bears, obviously. Some combination of wide receiver gaffes or drops or penalties. And then this last week, we threw into the mix one of my least favorite, variables, which is the weird Mahomes game where he has a couple of just strange decisions with the football. Bad balls, bad decisions. And I don't think we're going to see that against Minnesota, but it's something that's on my radar a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Minnesota, as we know, are the Chargers of the NFC.
That's
and
right.
Weird things happen when the Minnesota Vikings are on the field. You never know if they're going to be up 35, down 35, tied. There's just no telling how a Minnesota Vikings game is going to go, other than the fact that the Vikings are probably going to screw it up. And if they don't screw it up, they're going to be incredibly lucky. I mean, it's just, they're wild cards themselves as a whole team. But yeah, I agree with you that, things have been kind of weird so far. So maybe the weirdness of the Chiefs and the weirdness of the Vikings are going to counterbalance, and it's going to be a normal game.
Yeah, it could be, but probably not, because the Vikings have been extremely weird on defense this year. They're 20th in defensive DVOA, but the way that they got there is freakish and absurd. Brian Flores, their defensive coordinator, their new defensive coordinator, is blitzing at an absolutely bananas rate. Against the Chargers 2 weeks ago, the Vikings blitzed on 82%.
What?
82% of dropbacks against Justin Herbert, the second highest blitz rate in a game in the next gen stats era.
Wow.
82% of dropbacks against Justin Herbert they blitzed. And
how do they even have the endurance to do that?
I know.
Like, how do they even have the guys to run out there and blitz every play? Like, that's wild.
It is extremely weird. Now, in week 2 against the Eagles, they had the highest max blitz rate, that's 6+ rushers ever in the entire next gen stats era. 40% of the game they sent a max blitz, 6+ rushers. This is like how I play Madden.
The Eagles.
Like when I played
8.
Madden.
That's
how
what
I
the
played
called.
Madden. Yes, exactly. Engage 8. How I played Madden when I was like in college and I had never watched NFL football before and I didn't know what coverages were.
Oh, buddy, even people that watch NFL football still play like that.
Sure. Well, that's good. That's good to know, because I did love running Engage 8, but the Vikings actually did this in a game. And in the same game, they also had the highest drop 8 rate in the next gen stats era. They also dropped 8 defenders at 40% rate in that game. So they sent max blitzes 40% of the time, and then they sent 3 rushers 40% of the time. Just an absolutely insane, bizarre game plan. What's going to be so interesting about this is, on the whole, obviously they are blitzing at a maniac rate, and it's well known that you cannot blitz Patrick Mahomes, and that it is absurdly foolish to do so. And, we've seen occasionally teams adjust. The Ravens famously in the first game that they took off Patrick Mahomes because Clyde fumbled the ball, as they were driving to go ahead and win that game. The Ravens, in the game they actually beat Patrick Mahomes, decided not to blitz it for the first time ever. Wink Martindale had been like, blitz. Yeah. We're going to blitz this guy every game.
Lose.
What if we do a blitz that he's not seen before? What if we cook up a new blitz? No, it doesn't matter. No. He's still going to destroy you. They won that matchup. But in general, really down the stretch in 2021, teams just sort of stopped blitzing him. That's when they decided to start doing, all the drop 8, the cover 2 stuff. The flip side of that, though, is that once teams stopped blitzing him and decided to just run, these drop 8 dense zone coverages, he just learned how to beat those. And so now he's extremely good against, 8-man coverages. He will absolutely destroy cover 2, and he'll also destroy the blitz. So what do the Vikings do in this game?
Yeah, good question, and also kind of a question for the NFL at large, right? Like,
sure, of course.
Like, what do you do about Mahomes? What's the solve here? And
sure,
it does feel like if they're cranking all their dials one way or the other, if they're really getting squirrely with their calls, which it definitely sounds like Flores, maybe he just doesn't give a fuck. Maybe he's just like, look, the way things went in Miami, like, yeah, I got another job, but I'm just gonna play around. The Vikings are a mess anyway. I'm just gonna send, whatever he's doing. But I just don't see it working. And in fact, I see it going the opposite way of working. I think that if you're trying to outsmart Pat with just blitzing or not blitzing, then he's just going to eat you alive both times. And I have a feeling that's what's going to happen.
Another question that I have for this game is I'm wondering when the NFL is going to stop picking on our guy, Juwan Taylor. Obviously the holding call on 3rd and 13 that set up the 3rd and 23 heroics was legitimate. It was a hold. The refs got that call right. The safety call, as we've already discussed, was utterly absurd. He obviously did commit a foul, but he clearly did it before the end zone. He did it in the field of play. I'm just curious to see how he looks this week. If the NFL is going to continue to subject him to an intense level of scrutiny, or if he can keep the momentum going in a positive direction, if he can have another game without a false start, or it's just an alignment penalty, that would be great to see.
Yeah, I'm encouraged about this Jets game without those penalties. Now, calling a hold, on the most penalized player before all the alignment stuff happened, fine by me. Like he's been known to pick up flags. But like I think the face mask thing was a little bit more about the Chiefs and versus Jets than it was Juwan Taylor. I think if Donovan Smith was back there doing that, they would have made the same call. Just kind of a gut feeling thing there. So I do think that maybe, and especially with it being a Sunday night game, but Chris Collinsworth didn't really do Juwan any favors when he was called for the hold. He said, "Yep, that makes sense. He's the most penalized player in football. He's off held, all the off penalized, all the stuff that he said." So
That's
I mean. Yeah, it's shitty. I hope, like you said, that they stop picking on him, but I don't know when that'll be.
Serious question. How does the offense look without Taylor Swift in the stands?
Well, one aspect of this that I think you and I probably have touched on our many conversations about this, but I don't know if made it to the air, was that like Trav's got to be all over the place in his head.
Sure. Of course. How could he not be? How could he not be?
I mean, there were rumblings that he spent the night at Taylor's house the previous night. I would assume he did not get very much sleep. There's
the paparazzi were showing up to his house in Kansas City.
They were in Kansas City saying Travis Kelce spotted in Kansas City, like some kind of hurricane or something. Like it's wild and all the attention on him. I know he's used to it. But like the million new Instagram subscribers and all the different, just all the people that have got to be, you think about when someone's star goes supernova and how many people want to latch on to that star and ride it to the top. Sure. And how many people in his life would have been reaching out to him, maybe mostly with good intentions. Hey, buddy, I see you're dating the most famous person in the world. That's really cool. What's it like? All this stuff. Like,
sure.
It's been a media frenzy for him, and it's probably been a personal life frenzy for him. And honestly, we've kind of seen it on the field. Like,
sure.
Yeah, he caught a touchdown in the first game, but like he hasn't really been Travis. He hasn't really been dominant. He hasn't really been explosive. He hasn't really been, hasn't been on the same page with Pat on a couple throws. And like, sure, we can blame some of those on Pat, but like, don't you probably want to think that some of that might be because Travis Kelce has some other things on his mind, which, first of all, no blame towards Travis Kelce on that at all. That is absolutely understandable. He has earned the right to be a little distracted. It's the coolest thing that's ever happened really to anyone ever. So like, congrats to him. But it's just, I do think that without her, that it comes back to this question. Without her in the stands, which is what we predict is going to happen, I think he can kind of relax, kind of drop his shoulders a little bit, kind of get back into his whole kill a Trav mentality and go out there and ball. And I think that's what's going to happen.
That's my hope. And I have noticed, I mean, I do think he's obviously, this has been a slow start to the season for him. And, he turns 34 in 2 days. And so we have to hope that this is because his mind maybe isn't quite all there. And let's be clear, he also was coming back from an injury and didn't play in week 1. And obviously had a little bit of rust to shake off there. At the same time, the whole offense is going through obviously some transition with all the wide receivers coming in and, him being asked to carry the load a little bit. And especially, early in the season coming off of an injury, there's a lot going on for Trav. I think that there's a possibility that it does help. And I don't want to imply by that I think that Taylor's presence is a hindrance. I certainly don't think that. But I do think for all the reasons you've articulated that I don't want to use the word distraction at all, but just how could it not, and particularly for Travis,
it's the definition of distraction,
have no effect at all. And so it'll be interesting to see how the offense performs. Let's flip over to the other side of the ball here real quick. The Vikings are 12th in offensive DVOA. The Chiefs are 14th in defensive DVOA. That also took a little bit of a hit thanks to Zach Wilson, of all people, having, a pretty strong performance against the Chiefs defense. But really the question in this game comes down to what are the Chiefs going to do with Justin Jefferson? He's the best wide receiver in the NFL. He's probably the best non-quarterback player in the NFL. It's no secret that he's obviously the best player on the Vikings by far. The Chiefs don't really like to shadow wide receiver ones very often. They did do it down the stretch last year and into the playoffs. They were shifting McDuffie into play the slot and putting L'Jarius Sneed, who was kind of their primary slot corner for the bulk of last season, outside to shadow some wide receiver ones. And they did that with some success. And now Trent McDuffie is clearly the best cornerback on this team. He's still the PFF #1 graded cornerback in football. Absolute dog, absolute monster, having an incredible season. But he would give up 3 inches to Justin Jefferson, who's 6'1", McDuffie's 5'10". Obviously, McDuffie has those short little T-Rex arms, and Justin Jefferson is like a pterodactyl out there with his wingspan. So, on top of all of that, the secondary as a whole has been playing lights out. I mean, it's just been playing at an incredibly high level. And so you have to figure, even if they were to shadow Jefferson, that whoever's going to be playing him is going to have some help on the back end, that they'll dedicate safety to help cover him over the top. It's just going to be really interesting to see what the Chiefs do to try and slow him down.
It'll be interesting for sure. It's not something I'm really worried about at all, which is crazy because Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in football. And Kirk Cousins knows how to get him the ball. I mean,
sure.
He knows throw up a jump ball and JJ is going to go make it happen. And that's exactly what you want your quarterback to do when you have a talent like that. But what can you do? You can send one of the best secondaries in football after him, and you can clamp him with Clamps McDuffie. You can get, our super long, big, whether it's Joshua Williams or whatever the case may be. There are some options that Steve Spagnuolo has to handle it and to double team him and to bracket him and do all the fun stuff that everyone always talks about when you have a dynamic wide receiver on the other end. And at the end of the day, Trent McDuffie has defended plethora of 6'1" wide receivers in his NFL life. And
sure, yes.
the height difference, regardless there, he knows what he's doing out there. And I'm fine if they just want to say Trent shadow JJ and just you guys are going to be on each other's hips the whole game. That's great. That would work for me. And I know Jefferson's going to get his, but honestly, he's going to get his against every defense in the NFL. You can't be frustrated when Justin Jefferson catches balls. You just can't do it. It's like when in Kelsey's peak when he's catching balls and everyone's like, well, why can't we stop him? It's bro, sometimes you just can't. Sometimes there's just a mismatch. And you just have to give the other team their props and say, yep, you got a guy that knows exactly how to beat defenses in the NFL. And you just got to hope he doesn't go ballistic and go 203 touchdowns or something like that. But as long as they can keep him to an average Justin Jefferson game, which is probably 100 yards and a touchdown, then that's a win in my book.
Sure. And I mean, we haven't talked about this, but in addition to the fact that Justin Jefferson is obviously by far their best weapon, I mean, who else are you worried about? They have
Jordan Addison's a nice player.
Sure, he is. Rookie wide receiver Jordan Addison was their first round pick this year. He's had a couple of long touchdowns so far this year. He can certainly beat you, if you're dedicating too much effort stopping Justin Jefferson. But their run game has been non-existent. Their offensive line isn't very good. They've got Addison and Hawkinson, and those are kind of their complementary pieces. KJ Osborne when he's healthy, but I could see the Chiefs saying, we're going to let Justin Jefferson get his, and nobody else on the team is going to get to do anything. It'll be interesting to see how they dedicate their resources, because I could see them going either way. That school of thought. They famously kind of took the latter approach, the let wide receiver one do what he wants, we'll focus on everybody else approach against the Bengals a couple of years ago. And Jamar Chase torched them for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, I think it was. Absolutely went off. But of course, that secondary employed the services of Daniel Sorensen, and this secondary does not. So it'll be fascinating to see what the Chiefs do. Any X factors in this game for you? We got special teams. The special teams in this game, the Chiefs are up to 4th in special teams DVOA.
Look at that.
And the Vikings, I don't even know what their special teams DVOA is. I'm not going to
infinity.
But whatever it is, a team like the Vikings, it's just you get the Chargers of the NFC out there, and that could always be dangerous for the Chiefs.
Well, of course. So my X factor then, who I was teeing up before you teed it up for me, was Montrell Washington.
Oh yeah,
because
You love
he's
him.
my guy. I gave
Of
him my
course.
5-star.
Sure.
I tweeted about him several times since the Chiefs have brought him up. I just find his punt return aura to be satisfying. I think
Sure.
that
He does have an aura.
he does. He catches the ball. He runs with the ball. He doesn't drop the ball. He does everything that you just want a normal, standard NFL punt returner to do. And it's something that the Chiefs haven't had in a while. And I'm just tickled about it. So my X factor is that the Chiefs are going to rip off one big punt return. Doesn't have to be a touchdown, just some field flipping play by Montreal Washington. And of course, it'll probably be at like the 2-minute warning in a tie game, like sometime that the Vikings just absolutely cannot afford to have it happen because that's what the Vikings do. But yeah, that's my X factor.
That's what happens when you're playing against the Chargers of the NFC. See you guys next time. It's always sunny in Chiefs Kingdom.